PrusaSlicer 2.8 is finally here, and with it comes quite a few quality of life features. And no, we still don't have multi-plate support, but I'm told that's coming soon, TM. Maybe it's Friday. Let's talk about it. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Prusa Slicer update video. I want to start doing these on other slicers, so if there are other slicers you'd like us to follow relatively closely, please let me know down in those comments and we'll do what we can to add them into our list. But Prusa Slicer released a 2.8 update that, while for me personally, does not have a ton of features, if you are looking to use Prusa Connect, the whole cloud system for managing Prusa 3D printers, this is a big one for you. But it does bring some quality of life improvements, including first and final layer one wall perimeters, which is something that if you've been using OrcaSlicer or even SuperSlicer that you've enjoyed for quite some time now. It also brings in effectively a completely revamped UI that, well, will make life just a little bit easier, and dark mode looks so much better finally. And now the actual speed that you see in the G-code viewer is the actual speed that is really occurring, including all of the acceleration and deceleration that your prints are going through. And we've done a little bit of test printing for definitely not an upcoming video. Stay tuned, get subscribed for that kind of thing. I've really enjoyed these new settings, and it's made the experience specifically of understanding how the process works much easier. I want to start with the Prusa Connect features though, because that's probably the biggest one for those of you out there that put your printers on the cloud. Don't worry, for those like me that like the ye old sneaker net, because unless I trip and fall, it's pretty reliable as far as, networks themselves go. It is something that you don't have to integrate. You go here and you can log in. But if you notice, you can also hide the login button. So if you don't want to log into Prusa Connect, if you don't want any of that cloud feature, that dumb little login button is not going to bother you the whole freaking time. And I understand that that is such a small little thing, but for those of us that don't want to see it all the freaking time, that's actually kind of valuable. And very clearly we can see what mode that we're in. Of course, we're in expert mode, which I think if you're even remotely experienced in 3D printing, you can go straight to expert mode within PrusaSlicer. The UI, you might notice, looks very familiar to you, and that's okay. And in fact, what we noticed when we first updated to 2.8 is quite a few of our profiles were out of date, and it asked us once again if we wanted to send any data. Being what Prusa actually is, we can view that data in full verbatim right from PrusaSlicer itself. And from what I can see, it's just what my specs on my computer are. We have a 10700K, two 1440p monitors, and we are using the venerable 1080 Ti, for the Win 3, if you care to know that far into it. And then just extra stuff that comes with it. Nothing in the data that you would be sending to Prusa that Prusa is requesting, should you want it, is in any way, shape, or form problematic to me as someone that, well, cares a lot about data. That doesn't mean I'm going to send it. It just means that if you choose to send it, it's nothing that's that intrusive from what we can see. But the value for this is not just in the UI shifts, right? One of the big things for me that I've functionally enjoyed is right here. Only one perimeter. This is something that I've gotten really used to inside of OrcaSlicer, and it makes your top surface and bottom surface look so much better, especially if you're doing a part with a lot of these perimeter walls, so that the top and bottom, they just look really good. This part here actually clips onto the shelves behind me and is what is actually holding some of the filament that you see and you have seen for many years on this channel. We've just adjusted it to hold something else. While it's not immediately necessary that the top and bottom of this look beautiful, I will tell you that one perimeter absolutely adds the quality of what even a bone stock Mark 3S, yes, this is still being done on a Mark 3S, can do. I'm very happy to see this, and it's something that I've wanted. Now, something that I've also wanted was multi-plate support, which we still don't have, but given what open source is, I'm excited for it to be coming soon. See, the thing with this one layer top and bottom surface is that you might say, well, Grant, that's just taken from Bamboo Studio. And while technically you're correct, Bamboo Studio took it from OrcaSlicer, who took it from SuperSlicer. So it's a little bit of a complication, right? We can see that Prusa ported in the code from Bamboo Studio with only small changes. Even though they ended up not using the original SuperSlicer implementation, they would like to thank everyone who implemented it in the first place, which has enabled the rest of us to enjoy these great features. And if you've been running Bamboo Studio or OrcaSlicer, please just run OrcaSlicer. I'm not getting into why. If you don't know why by now, click the card. It will explain everything you need to know. This is great, right? This is what we love about open source, and where PrusaSlicer never had this feature. You just used whatever top and bottom layers that you had. For this one, I chose 4 perimeters because it's good for the quality and strength that we need. But, you know, top and bottom layers will absolutely benefit from an increase in quality when you're running your machines, especially when you're doing things like text. And something that I didn't understand or even know was a thing was that when you got profile updates, those were for any of the printers inside of PrusaSlicer, not just the ones that you had. So this new implementation of the profile updating system is just for the machines that you've chosen. I don't know why it wasn't like that from the beginning, but apparently this has been a thing in pretty much any slicer based on Slick 3R has been like this for years, like literally 6 years ago, according to the announcement here. And that's great because it means you're utilizing less data. And you might say, Grant, who cares? Well, if you're in an area where you have a slow internet connection or you have a metered connection, every kilobyte counts, so that can add up. And certainly, why have extra data on a computer that is not going to be useful for you whatsoever? And so we can see here a good example is if you only use the SL1, which is Prusa's MSLA resin printer, you won't be disturbed about update profiles which are not relevant to you. That's awesome! Why was that not a thing? I don't understand that one, but I'm glad to see it. But something else that I'm really glad to see is the improved G-code viewer. Previously, viewing G-code for speed looked like this. It was fine, it gave us an idea of what we were looking at, but it wasn't the real speed. It didn't include the accelerations and decelerations. And when you're trying to show what all of this stuff is, and why it particularly matters, especially to newbies, and they're trying to understand why all these colors matter, it was a little bit difficult because we all intrinsically know the machine has to speed up and slow down during these movements across the grid profile, but it never showed it. Now it does. And so if we look at the actual part, this is the actual part that we sliced, and the actual part that was printed, we can see that this is normal. This is your feature type look, okay? Yes, it's got 3D Musketeers on the side of it. But if we go to speed, this is the old school way of looking at it, okay? This just shows us the max speed for those actual moves. But we can now go to actual speed. But this is a great way to visually show the machine speeding up and slowing down. And yes, on small parts like this, it absolutely gets lost in the weeds of whatever weird tie-dye craziness that you see. But if you're someone that's trying to better understand how speed is impacting the quality of your parts and where things like ringing and other anomalies might occur, this is a phenomenal tool to help you better understand it without sitting by your 3D printer with a magnifying glass watching it, hopefully not getting too close and getting smacked by it. And they've done the same thing for volumetric flow rate. This is what we previously saw for volumetric flow rate, which is, again, the maximum, right? And we can see there are some areas where built-in acceleration is applied. So like right here, we can see there's built-in acceleration because of that corner. Well, if we look at actual volumetric flow rate, this is a realistic representation of what that looks like. So everyone that's running those volumetric flow tests, right, when you're trying to test a nozzle, we've been assuming that the printer is running at its full volumetric flow rate throughout that entire motion. And likely, it's not. It could be, but when we look at it in reality, what it actually shows you, that is much more valuable when we're trying to understand precisely what we're looking at and how small adjustments to speed or acceleration can and do impact surface quality finish on your 3D prints. And we can see that while this is a 4-perimeter model, at the top layer and at the bottom layer, it is just 1 perimeter. Now, again, on this small part, we're not going to see a big difference, and the quality is not... It's a functional part. It doesn't need to look pretty. But certainly on things like text, having that 1 wall perimeter will be so much more valuable to the work that you want to do. A great example of this is an actual part that we're doing for a client. This is a real client part, okay? And this is what it looks like with 1 perimeter. If we remove that setting and we just straight disable it and we reslice, look at how much worse that would look. That would look so much worse. The 1 perimeter is the way, especially when you're dealing with text. So if you are dealing with text, make sure, at least for me, I go with all top surfaces. If you want to just use just the topmost surface, that's fine. But I like all top surfaces with 1 perimeter. I think it makes it look really good. But if all you care about is strength, well, you probably never cared about this feature in the first place. And if you didn't notice it, there's a little bit of a different UI. Me personally, I'm still getting used to it, right? I miss my top menu bar. Now the menu is just a drop down here where, yes, everything is kind of where you expect it to be. Preferences are where you expect it to be. Dark mode finally works well for me. The previous iterations didn't work well for me. This works way better, so I'm excited for it. This is exactly what you expect, where you expect it. It's just a little bit lower. So for me, platter used to be where menu is, so I'm often hitting menu instead of hitting the platter itself. And these bottom bars, the actual slider bars, the vertical one and the horizontal one, will seem very familiar to you. If you've used Orca Slicer or Bamboo Studio, these are going to be familiar because it's the same bars. The only difference that we can see is, well, the hexagons are the bestagons, right? But the system works the way that you expect it. This can show us the actual little bits of G-code that are occurring when the printer is doing the moves, and that is for each individual layer. So if we go down to a random layer here, we can move the horizontal slider to actually go through the moves that the printer will make for every single one of the actual moves. But yeah, I think the big thing is going to be that Prusa Connect integration. This is so valuable to not have to use a separate window. You can do it all from within PrusaSlicer, and you can send directly to Connect, rather than exporting to a micro SD card or having to do Prusa Connect in a browser. This is a really nice quality of life feature. It is similar to me for what we get with Clipper, where I can just click a different tab and it can now go to Clipper. But Prusa Connect will give you an overview of all of your machines in it. Now, we don't normally have more than a couple of machines online for Clipper, and I've never tried to connect to all of them at once, so I don't know if this is possible in Clipper. But if I was running a print farm where we were just running pieces and we needed to know what our machines were doing, and internet connectivity is not a security risk like it is for our business, then I would love having Prusa Connect here. Especially because, well, Prusa printers are not known for their particularly fast Wi-Fi, and being able to get it to the machine faster, those couple of seconds can make all the difference in getting that print started sooner. And I love how they make it very clear here. Note that logging in or using Prusa Connect is completely optional. PrusaSlicer will work fine without the login, as it has worked before. We are considering to add a preferences checkbox to hide the login box completely, not to bother people who intend to never use it anyway. Your feedback is welcome. That, and all of this, is actually from the 2.8 Alpha 5. In future releases, because now 2.8 is in full release, they did add that. And for those that were following, it went from Beta 1 to RC1 to RC2 in the better part of like 3 days. It moved very, very quickly to being a full-featured and ready to download slicer software. We have enjoyed it, and I love that since I'm not going to use it, I can hide the login, visit preferences, and I can bring it back in if I want. Boom. Gone. Now I no longer have to see it. That is a great feature that, for those that aren't going to use it, You're not losing anything. And while I recognize that we are coming up on version 3.0, I don't know. Maybe Prusa will do a 2.9 before they go to 3. Maybe they won't. We will see. But I'm hoping that 3.0 certainly brings the multi-plate support. That's something that I've wanted, that I've really enjoyed out of Orca Slicer, especially when you're doing a big print job that does require multiple plates. Well, technically, you can set up multiple plates within PrusaSlicer. You can't just click on an area and have that be your new plate. It is a really nice quality of life feature, and I hope they add it for the latest large revision. But I'd like to know your opinion of what you would like to see in the next PrusaSlicer revision down in those comments, because I know PrusaSlicer devs watch this channel. So hey folks, thanks for all this work. The slicer is consistently getting better, but definitely experiment in here. This is part of what makes slicers better, by you all experimenting, finding what you like, what you don't like, submitting bug reports when you find them, because ultimately open source slicer softwares to me are the future of this industry, because everyone works together. So your user experience should be reasonably consistent. Something that Joe showed off on Twitter that I wanted to show you guys as well. You can now do X, Y, and Z separately, compensation for shrinkage for different plastics. Certain plastics will shrink differently in different orientations, and specifically for materials like ABS, ASA, and nylon, they have a much higher tendency to shrink X and Y and not really shrink a whole lot in the Z. This is all something that you can actually check and verify. You first got to make sure that your machine is extruding properly. You can print your flavor of calibration part, do your measurements, then print it out of this exotic material that you want to actually check your shrinkage on. And, well, you adjust it based on a percentage value. Then you verify. Make sure you verify, because sometimes it's not always the same. Once you get all of that taken care of, the slicer will go through and make changes for you to accommodate that shrinkage factor that's already worked in. You'll no longer have to increase your parts by 0.27% or whatever value people decide on for the extra amount for ABS. You can do it right in Slicer, which we absolutely love. And another thing that Joe actually showed off on Twitter as well, the prefer clockwise movements. This prefer clockwise movements is one of those weird ones that if you've never experienced an E3D Revo unscrewing on you, they think they figured it out. Slicers traditionally go counterclockwise, and the nozzle travels in a slightly longer distance on the outside compared to the inside of an extruded line. This creates torque, which little by little unscrews the nozzle. This is their current working theory. The larger the nozzle and extruded line width, the larger the torque, and faster print speed also means more torque. So in 2.8, what Joe now calls Revo mode, you can now do prefer clockwise movements. So if you are running an E3D Revo on your machine, definitely get that one checked. And it is a machine setting, not a profile setting. So it's saved to the machine. So if your machine uses Revos, go ahead and click that one. But like, that's one of those features that I love to see, and probably my favorite one, because we've certainly covered quite a few instances in Print Fix Friday where Revos have absolutely destroyed build plates and then themselves gotten destroyed because they're slowly coming unscrewed. Let me know what you all think down below. But that's where we would challenge you to experiment and find new settings just like this inside of PrusaSlicer. Let me know the ones that you find are the ones that you find to be the most valuable that have come in 2.8. And of course, don't forget to let me know other slicers you want us to follow and show updates as they come out. And hey, while you're down there, leave a like if you think we earned it, and subscribe, because that doesn't cost anything and helps the channel grow. What also helps the channel grow is getting your name in the lights listed right next to me, which comes at the $5 tier and higher from PayPal, Patreon, or YouTube channel members. Of course, all of those are linked in that description, where you can join for as little as $1 a month. And at the $10 tier gives you access to our private Discord server where, you know what's coming soon. There's some pretty big news coming out for us. We're launching a merch store where we're going to be selling shirts just like this. And if you've been a part of our Discord server, you have been experiencing some of these designs for months and been able to provide input so that we can make even more fun designs. And don't worry, all of you channel member supporters, you all will have a custom code that we're going to give to you when we release the store, so you can get some merch at a good discount. But right below me will be the PrusaSlicer 2.7 update, back when I still had long hair. And right next to that will be our coverage of PrusaSlicer 2.6. Wow, almost exactly a year ago. That's pretty cool. That's all we have for you all today. Stay safe out there, don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.